Good morning, everyone. We're just going to give it a few minutes whilst we wait for everyone to land and arrive at the webinar. I hope you're doing okay this morning. Brilliant. There are a few more people just trailing in now. Welcome, everybody. I hope you're having a good morning so far. Yeah, please do say hello and introduce yourself in the chat and let everybody know who you are, what organisations you're from, and we'll make a start in just a few moments. Okay, let's make a start then. So good morning, everyone. My name is Sarah McIntosh, and I'm going to be your host for today's webinar. I'm the Director of Delivery at Mental Health First Aid England, and I'm also the Managing Director of the newly launched Association of Mental Health First Aiders, of which we're going to be talking a little bit more about later in today's webinar. For those of you who are not as familiar with Mental Health First Aid England, a little bit about our organisation. So our mission is to train 1 in 10 of the population in mental health knowledge and skills so that we can make mental health conversations an everyday practice and remove the stigma around talking around our mental health. We're a social enterprise, so when we do business, we reinvest our profits back into providing free training to adults who work with young people. So we're investing in the mental health of future generations. We're also the National Authority on Mental Health First Aid, having brought the concept to England from Australia over 16 years ago. Mental Health First Aid is now an internationally recognised programme and it operates in 20 countries across the world. And here at Mental Health First Aid England, we've worked with over 20,000 employers and trained over 1 million people in mental health knowledge and skills. And of those million, over 500,000 of those are trained in mental health first aid and have gone on to become mental health first aiders. So that's a little bit about us. Before we get started with today's webinar, we just wanted to do a little bit of housekeeping to help make sure the webinar goes as smoothly as possible. So today's webinar is being recorded and you'll get a copy of the recording and also the slides as well. We'll send those to you after today's event in case you'd like to refer back to it. Your cameras and your microphones are off today. So if you'd like to ask any of today's speakers a question, please do use the Q&A function to post your questions at the bottom of your screen. Do feel free to use the chat though to introduce yourself, your organisation, and also share any impacts, best practice or tips from your own organisations throughout the session. But do please try to remember to keep the questions in the Q&A tool, and that will make sure that we can go through as many questions as possible towards the end of today's session. So let's take a look at the agenda for today's webinar. We're going to be spending some time today talking about why mental health first aiders are so important and the fantastic impact that they have. We're going to be hearing from our panel on their experiences of being a mental health first aider and also their experiences of supporting a mental health first aider network in their own organisations. We're also going to be talking about the newly launched Association of Mental Health First Aid, so why we've launched it and how you can become a member. And how if you've got mental health first aiders already, they can become a member of the association. And then we'll make sure we've got lots of time for questions in a Q&A session towards the end of today's webinar. So let's introduce you to today's panel then. So joining me today are Andy and Jemima. Andy, do you want to give us a quick introduction? And then we'll move on to Jemima.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Sarah. I'm thrilled to be here today. I'm Andy Ward. I'm the Chair of the Association of Mental Health First Aiders. I'm also a non-executive director at Mental Health First England. And in my day job, I'm a learning and development manager at Deutsche Bank here in London.
Thanks, Andy. And Jemima?
Thanks, Sarah. And also a pleasure to be here as well. Being part of this panel is absolutely fantastic and I really appreciate the opportunity. So I work with Grant Thornton, been with the business for about 6 years. I started off in our business support team and sort of worked my way through to our inclusion and diversity team. Currently, I'm the assistant manager supporting our inclusion and diversity agenda as well as health and wellbeing agenda within the business. My role as a mental health first aider started just from a personal interest in all things health and well-being, but now I'm currently managing all the mental health first aiders and health champions within the business. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jemima. And we look forward to hearing both of your experiences and thoughts and best practice tips to share with the webinar attendees today. So we're going to start today's webinar with looking at just why mental health first aiders are so important. So just to give you some context, so many of you may know this, but every year, 1 in 4 of us will experience mental ill health. And yet many of us feel there's still a level of stigma attached to opening up about our mental health. And many of us would not know how to open up a conversation with someone if we were worried about their mental health. In fact, the latest research from the Samaritans only last month showed that only 54% of us would have a conversation with someone that they suspected may be having thoughts of suicide. So that just goes to show that there are lots of conversations we may want to have, but sometimes we're just not sure of the right words or how to open up a conversation to support people. We also know from a workplace mental health perspective that the Chartered Institute for Personnel and Development tell us that 63% of long-term workplace absences are due to mental ill health. And we also know that around 300,000 people with longer-term mental health issues feel that they have to leave their job each year because they're not getting the right level of support to perform in their role. So overall, mental ill health is costing employers around £56 billion a year, and that hits our economy hard too. So what we know is that the earlier that someone who may be having issues with their mental health recognises that they may be having an issue and considers the support that they may need, including any professional support, that it can speed up their recovery and it will also improve their longer-term mental health outcomes. Mental health first aiders help to provide an early prevention and intervention role for individuals that are experiencing mental ill health. So quite often they'll spot the signs that someone is struggling and will open up a conversation with them to understand what's going on. They'll offer non-judgmental listening and reassurance, and they'll help that person to identify steps to take to support their own well-being and self-care, but also steps to take which may involve signposting them to additional support, sometimes professional support, to help to significantly improve their mental health and their overall well-being. Now, these conversations can be life-changing and life-saving to individuals. And it's also valuable to employers who want to improve the mental health and well-being of their staff, which is why we see so many workplaces look to have a network of mental health first aiders as part of their overall support approach. It's important to say, though, that although mental health first aiders play a crucial role in transforming workplace mental health, that employers must only offer mental health first aiders as part of a wider and comprehensive wellbeing strategy, and that mental health first aiders should be fully supported in their role to help maintain their own wellbeing, but also their effectiveness and impact. So let's hear now from 2 mental health first aiders, so Andy and Jemima, and let's hear a little bit about their journeys to becoming a mental health first aider, and also their journeys to introducing mental health first aiders into their own organisations. So I'm going to start with Andy. Let's come to you first. So can you tell us, Andy, briefly how you came to become a mental health first aider in the first place?
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. I think like a lot of people, my journey started with my own mental health. I work in a fast-paced environment, I always have done, and I've always thought, like most people, that, you know, stress is great, I can cope with this, nothing is wrong here, everybody gets this angry, everything is fine. And actually, joining what was then the first round of mental health first aiders training at my organisation allowed me to identify those signs in myself. Right? So it was a swift 2-day journey from everything is awesome to, yeah, I need to get myself some help. In turn, that actually led to me taking 3.5 months away from work. It was a journey that I didn't anticipate I was going to embark on, but one that I'm super thankful that I did, because ultimately that journey changed my life, arguably saved my life, and gave me kind of a new desire, really, to take on what I think a lot of people would refer to as survivor's mission, which is then, how do I make sure that other people don't go through what I'm going through, and how do I make sure that I do what I can to help and to signpost and support people. I think the training itself really is really important in terms of that sign spotting, and I remember very briefly, I remember being in a lift between the end of the first day and the start of the second, and saying to people, isn't it interesting how many of the symptoms that we've been talking about and the signs that we should be looking for, you sort of see in yourself every day? And everyone in the lift looked at me as if to say, that's not something that we're dealing with. But when I came back to work three and a half months later, as I say, the work had moved on ever so slightly. A few more cohorts had gone through mental health first aid training, and we were really looking at how we could turn that from individuals on the ground who had done a bit of training to really making this a movement, turning it into a community, and working with our HR teams and our wellbeing strategy to bring both that kind of top-down approach and also this bottom-up grassroots approach to wellbeing at bank.
Thanks, Andy. So it sounds like it was powerful for you as an individual, but also started to grow quite rapidly in Deutsche Bank. In terms of Deutsche Bank considering putting mental health first aiders into the workplace in the first place, what did you need to do to convince your workplace that this was a good idea and what the benefits of that were to them?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's one that I'm not going to claim any credit for being involved in those initial conversations, but from speaking to those who were, there was negotiation back and forth, of course, with anything that isn't a top-down approach, if you like. There's always an element of risk that has to be taken into account. I think the ultimate green light was given when the team or the individuals rather, a team then, who were working on bringing this training to the bank, decided the best way to do it was a pilot, right? Let's do a small pilot, let's train a few people, let's let them come back to the organization, discuss the training, discuss the types of content that they've been exposed to, and then think about how that can be integrated more broadly and more widely into that wellbeing strategy at the bank. And thankfully, that worked really well. We trained a few random individuals, such as myself. We trained a few people who sort of more of the decision makers, and both sets of individuals really saw the benefit of bringing mental health first aid training to the bank. And actually, when I returned to the office after my absence, I really wanted to make sure that I was able to both bring my experience of having the absence, but also of doing the training, and bring a kind of personal view of how I thought we could really make this work, and to a greater or lesser extent, really lean into my anarchistic side in, what's the worst that can happen if we really make a go of this, right? Let's make sure that we do this within controls and within structure, and making sure that people are aware of what they are and aren't charged to do by taking on this role. But then really thinking about how we can publicize this as something that we are doing as employees for the benefit of our wider employee base. And I think that was where the success of the program really came from.
Brilliant, thank you. Could you share a little bit with us about how big and how strong that network is today, and also some of the positive impacts that they've had on the organisation?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things I think back to, obviously in preparation for this, I was thinking back to my time away and what I heard was happening whilst I was away when I came back, and the aspirations, I guess, that we had at that time really was to see, could we make sure that we had a presence of mental health first aiders within our UK office bases, right, which is two main bases here in England. And could we make sure that we had enough mental health first aiders to represent the populations that we had? And that really was the extent of the aspiration. We didn't think it would go much further. And then after sort of getting to that stage and creating this community, I work in finance. Obviously, we love a steerco and a senior leadership team or whatever. I can't remember what we called ourselves at the time. But as a group, we decided, well, if this is working here, we should be talking about this more and seeing what availability there is for offices and employees around the world in terms of the international scope of mental health first aid training. And that's when the work kind of began to publicize this as much as possible. And the impact that had was frankly incredible, mostly because we, as a small group, we got a seat at the table for the wellbeing strategy of the bank more broadly. We were able to publicize what we were doing in such a way as that it was an incredibly positive thing for employees and incredibly positive thing for people to engage with. And we started to really catch the ear, I guess, of individuals around our global footprint. which led to numerous conversations. Both myself and other members of that original sort of steering group were engaging to work with Mental Health First Aid England and our partners, our sort of our client partners there, to understand through Mental Health First Aid International what other partners were available to us globally, and whether where there wasn't actually a provider, if there was anything that we could do in an interim method just to help people understand more about this topic. And I can, I've stepped back, part of my role now being on the board of Mental Health First Aid England, just to ensure no conflicts, is to make sure I step back a little and let the team ultimately that took over just run free. And my goodness, have they run free? What started as 16 people spread across London and Birmingham is now 16 countries, with, I think we're approaching 600-700 mental health first aiders that have been trained, and we continue to grow and expand. And there are more countries coming online now, which is frankly wonderful, and something, even that core group of original individuals who booked that first pilot training, I don't think they ever could have seen the impact that it had, and the way that it's helped to push forward the conversation and make sure that these are topics that we do take very seriously, and we don't talk about them as a topic that we feel we should talk about. We talk about them because we want to talk about them. We work, as I say, the team there, the mental health first aid team at the bank works very closely with our global wellbeing head, our HR departments, and business heads and managers around the organisation, which is just incredibly inspiring when you look back to the ramshackle group of individuals 6 years ago.
Brilliant. And just to echo some of the comments in the chat, Andy, that's a phenomenal effort there by Deutsche Bank, and the impact there and the numbers that you've got in that network is absolutely amazing. So well done for doing that. And just one final question for you, Andy, before I move on to Jemima. How are you monitoring sort of the impact and the benefits of those mental health first aiders on a day-to-day, month-to-month basis?
Yeah, it's a difficult one. We have to strike the balance between data protection and understanding confidentiality, but also making sure, again, from a very financial point of view, what does that return on investment look like? And a lot of it is anecdotal. There's a lot of anecdotal feedback that the team receive. There's a lot of sharing and understanding and making sure that there's a lot of best practice. The mental health first aid program now is actually listed as an employee benefit at the bank. We have, as most organizations do, we have a set of employee benefits, and it's listed there as part of our wellbeing benefits package to employees. Mental health first aid is one of those things that is front and center. I think, more broadly in terms of data-driven impact, it's very difficult to understand exactly how conversations that are happening, which must be kept in confidence, of course, are having a direct impact. I think, nobody wants to think about the positive of conversations leading to what could be perceived as the negative of people maybe taking a sickness absence or whatever. But actually, I think the biggest impact that we've been able to measure is the way that when I came into this organization, we didn't talk about anything to do with what we would now call mental health, right? We didn't. It was man up. It was get on with it. It was pull your socks up and move forward. Now we're an organization where our managers and employees, as part of their daily or weekly one-to-one routines, are checking in with each other and making sure they're okay, and ensuring that team members are okay, and making adjustments where they're needed. And I think in terms of, if we talk about impact, I think from a culture point of view and from a psychological safety point of view of our employees, we continue to make great strides. And I'm more than anything else, I think I'm incredibly proud of the organisation for the way that it's embraced everything in this area. And continues to do so.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Andy. That's really insightful. I know there are some questions coming through about the practicalities of how you run your network, so we'll probably get to some of those in the Q&A session towards the end of the webinar. Jemima, I'm going to come to you now, if that's okay. Would you be able to tell us a little bit about your journey to becoming a mental health first aider, and then obviously going on to look at a network as well?
Yeah, sure. At Grant Thornton, mental health has been something that we've looked at for some time now. But when I joined the team originally, as the advisor for ED&I, we had a team that managed our mental health first aiders. We also have health champions within the business. And then I took on the role in 2022. Managing the group, and quickly realized that there was so many benefits from running these sessions, looking at our poll survey results and the impacts that was having on some of our wellbeing scores and our strategy. And it's just word on the ground was it was very useful to have access to a mental health first aider when needed. So I signed up to do the training myself because I wanted to know exactly what this felt like for someone coming to me, or whether myself or any member of my family inside of work or outside of work, what that felt like. And I did the training myself, and I quickly realized how, important and valuable it was. It was one thing managing a group and not really knowing the content of what they're doing, and there's another thing understanding what it feels like to actually have that support. And for me personally, I began to realize, like Andy said, how the training actually reflected areas where I needed to work on personally, where I needed to develop myself and have that stronger mental health or healthier mental health for myself, and then be able to support others as well. So for me, aside it being my job requirement to have done it, it became personal, and I began to, like Andy, realize symptoms that I had that were actually you need help in this area, or you need to get additional support. So it didn't just benefit our business, but individuals that have done the training have personally seen benefits. And the amazing thing with us as a business is when people have that sort of eye-opening experience, we're able to provide additional support to them. So it's not just the mental health first aid support, things like counseling, which, like Andy mentioned, for their business, we have additional benefits that they can have. So getting additional counseling support. As you're aware, mental health first aiders aren't not counselors, they're not professionals, they're there to signpost. So being able to even have that initial conversation to spot that there is something wrong sort of prevents anybody from getting to crisis point. And for me, that's one of the very important things that I realized in having mental health first aiders. And just like having a first aider, they're not a doctor, but they can help you, assist you at that initial state before you get to that point where, whether you're going into an ambulance or you're going to see your GP or you're going to A&E, you've had that first aid support, that initial contact with somebody before you move on to the next steps. So for me, I see them as our triage in the business when it comes to mental health, and absolutely invaluable. Personally, having had kids, there have been things that I've experienced, but I didn't link it to mental health. I didn't think I had poor mental health, coming from a culture where, talking about mental health isn't a normal thing. We don't talk about our mental health. Like Andy said, man up, deal with it, and one of the things that we say in my culture is, men don't cry, stuff like that. But then understanding that actually, just like having a headache, you'll need paracetamol, there are support systems in place to support anybody going through any form of mental health challenge or difficulty, or questioning. Sometimes it might just be questioning, but knowing that this is a support that's available, this is the person I go to help me get that support, so invaluable.
Thanks, Jemima. I love some of your analogies there. They're really, really good. Can you tell us a little bit about how big your mental health first aid network is now, and what benefits you can see that they're having on your own workplace's mental health and wellbeing?
Yeah, I think I've kind of said some of the benefits already, but when we initially started, we had to look at our employee population just to see how many we needed for each location. Just looking at the logistics of whether we're going to do it based on people managers or HR, or how are we going to set it up. We had to look at the number of employees we had and the most practical way of ensuring that we had sufficient. So when we went through the data, we went through all that background check, shall I call it, we quickly realized that having one mental health first aider to 100 people in our business seemed the right start. So that's how we originally started. And at the time, we had about 55 mental health first aiders, and that quickly grew. Currently, we have 85 mental health first aiders. But like I said earlier on, we don't just have mental health first aiders. We have mental health first aiders and health champions. So the mental health first aiders have the training from Mental Health First Aid England, but our health champions also have ad hoc top-up trainings. And with that group, we have about 100. So if you put those two groups together, we have about 185. Aside there being location-based, we have certain teams that are really high-pressured teams. And because of the job roles that they do, we ensure that they have sufficient mental health first aiders on the ground, whether that's at a client site, whether that's at a project they're working on. They have teams on site to support those colleagues. So some of our teams, for example, our Deals and BC team have specific mental health first aiders. They've just trained 16 mental health first aiders just this year, and that's ongoing. So we review it quite regularly with the support of Mental Health First Aid England. But for us, it's more about our people and ensuring that we have enough and adequate support to get people help before they reach crisis. Hopefully that answers that question for you.
Yes, thank you, Jemima. Can I also ask, what kind of support do you put in place for your mental health first aid to support them and help them in their role?
Yeah, so I think it's really, really important that whatever mental health first aiders you have, they themselves have the support to equip them, to give them that psychological safety that Andy mentioned earlier on. And we're really privileged as a business to have really supportive senior stakeholders. So we have mental health first aiders who are actually partners and actually understand the return on investment, that actually understand what we need to make these things possible for that group. So we have quarterly sessions. We have ad hoc training sessions that we book through Mental Health First Aid England, and that's all to equip them to engage. And we've also kind of put them together in groups of location, so they support each other at locational basis. We have ongoing support through our teams, to our SharePoint channels, and through connections with other stakeholders that we have externally, whether that's Mental Health First Aid England, whether that's AXA, who provide some of our business benefits for our people. We have access to all of that, and that's constantly on the go. But another great thing that we have access to is the app, the Mental Health First Aid England app. And I think that for us as a business was a game changer, because as you're aware, we don't all work the same. Hybrid working is in place, and you can't always reach a colleague should you need support as a mental health first aider. So for themselves, having access to that app has been really supportive for them to get that hands-on support that's needed within that group as well. But if we look at the statistics for us as a business, some of the benefits that we've actually seen are in our sense of like our wellbeing rating. So we have a wellbeing rating that we get our people to score on whether they need support in any area whatsoever. And that's actually risen as a result of some of these things that we put in place and the support that's available to them. So we score 1 to 5, and on average, we're within 3.5. And the last pulse survey we did, which was just this month gone, the results what came out, and we're at 3.7 as a whole firm. But if you look at some of service lines, we're scoring really, really high in some of the service lines in terms of that sense of people's well-being. And then we provide one-to-one support for those that maybe are needing extra support. And then when you look at things like, will people recommend Grant Thornton as a place to work as a result? That's actually really, really high. It's at 87% at the moment. And that's risen since the last pulse survey result. And if you look at things like belonging, that's also up. Pride is also up. People feeling proud to be at Grant Thornton, that's at 87%. And I think most importantly, it's as a result of all these things that we put in place to support our people when it comes to mental health support as well.
Brilliant. Some great insights and statistics there, Jemima. Thank you so much for sharing.
Pleasure.
Just to preempt, as we get towards the Q&A session at the end of the webinar, there are a few things in the chat that are talking about how do you make mental health first aiders more visible, especially if you're working remotely or in a hybrid world, and also more about the infrastructure and support that's in place for mental health first aiders as well. So just to preempt Jemima and Andy, that will be coming later towards the end. We'll ask a few questions around that as well.
Of course.
Thank you both. It's really helpful to kind of bring to life how mental health first aiders are supporting and benefiting your own organisations, and we'll come back and explore some of the questions that the webinar attendees have got around that a little bit later in the webinar. But next, what I want to do is I want to kind of look at the national impact of mental health first aiders and just share with you some of the information and insights that we've collected this year. So we surveyed our huge mental health first aider community earlier this year, and I personally was amazed at the impacts that we are having as a collective community, and some of the free format comments in the survey about real life scenarios that have changed and saved lives have been absolutely phenomenal for me to read. So just to give you a flavour of some of the impact we're having collectively, 94% of our mental health first aiders say that they believe they're challenging stigma around mental health. 91% say that the role of the MHFAs are transforming the way that society talks about and supports mental health. 83% of our mental health first aiders believe they're helping to support the mental health of their workplace. And the most phenomenal stat for me is 91% of that MHFA community believe that the role of a mental health first aider is saving lives. We also asked our mental health first aiders about how often they're using their skills to support people. So bear in mind, we've trained over 300,000 mental health first aiders since the pandemic. And what we know is that over 50% of them are using their knowledge and skills in mental health first aid to support someone's mental health at least once a week. And there's a further third of those that are supporting someone at least once a month. So with my very crude maths, that means that our current community of mental health first aiders are having over 10 million conversations a year, both life-changing and life-saving conversations, which is absolutely phenomenal. Now, we want to grow this hugely powerful and impactful community and grow the reach of their conversations even more across society. And that's why we're immensely proud to have launched the Association of Mental Health First Aiders last week. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking to you more about the association. And again, as part of the Q&A at the end of today's webinar, we can pick up any questions that you may have about it and what it might mean for your organisations or for you if you're a mental health first aider. So the Association of Mental Health First Aiders is England's first and only membership body for mental health first aiders. So our mission is to grow and empower the largest community of mental health first aiders to transform how we talk about and how we support mental health. So we've been founded as a subsidiary of Mental Health First Aid England, and the association exists to ensure that mental health first aid training is not just a 2-day training course, but that it's a fully supported membership experience that provides mental health first aiders with support, ongoing learning and development, the opportunity to share best practice across the mental health first aider community, and the opportunity to celebrate and champion our collective impact. So being a member of the association shows that a person has been trained to an internationally recognised mental health first aid standard and has an active and a valid mental health first aid certificate. So effectively that means it's in date within that 3-year period. Membership will enhance the impact of mental health first aiders in workplaces and communities by providing a structured membership support package that includes exclusive resources, toolkits and research for mental health first aiders, continuous learning opportunities through webinars and events, the opportunity to share best practice and learn from others in the mental health first aider community, and access to our mental health first aider support app, where you can get access to the latest national and local signposting information to help your mental health first aid conversations. You can access 24/7 support for your own mental health as a mental health first aider through the tech service Shout. You can keep a log of the impact that you are having, so the number of mental health first aid conversations you're having, the mental health concerns that you are seeing in the people that you support, and where you are signposting people to the most, so that we can start to help workplaces, different sectors, and our national community understand the issues, trends, and themes to address mental health on a more strategic level. I'm really proud that we're the only mental health first aid training provider that offers ongoing support to mental health first aiders after their initial training. And the best thing about the membership for the association is once you've attended a mental health first aid training course, you're invited to join the association and get this membership for free, giving you access to membership support for 3 years in line with the date on your mental health first aider certificate. So I just want to share with you one of our launch videos for the association. So there's quite a number of different videos, but this one is our sort of umbrella video.
I wanted to better understand how I can support at home and at work. I took the course and became a mental health first aider. And I'm now excited to be a part of the Association of Mental Health First Aiders.
I'm proud to be part of the Association of Mental Health First Aiders.
People can benefit from being connected, which is why I'm excited to be part of the Association of Mental Health First Aiders.
Emma, how are we?
I use social media to share my journey and use my role in the Association of Mental Health First Aiders to extend a helping hand. Together, we can transform
How we talk about
and support
Mental health.
So that's one of our many videos that are available. You can find that video and other videos available on the Association of Mental Health First Aiders new website. There's also information on there about how to join the association and what you can expect as part of your membership of the association as well. You can visit our website at www.aomhfa.org and find out more. But I'm going to move on now to talk a little bit about how you can become a member of the association. So to become a member of the Association of Mental Health First Aiders, you will need to complete either a mental health first aid course or a mental health first aid refresher course if you are refreshing your skills, which we ask people to do every 3 years. Once you've attended your training course, you'll receive an invitation via email to join the Association of Mental Health First Aiders and access the membership benefits for free for the 3 years that your mental health first aid certificate is valid for. Lots of you on this webinar today are already mental health first aiders. So if you're an existing mental health first aider and you have a valid mental health first aid certificate, so that means it's dated within the last 3 years, you will receive a personal invitation to join the association. These emails will be going out from mid-July to early September because we have 300,000 mental health first aiders to invite to join the association. So we're going to phase those invites so that we can support you and onboard you in the most effective way possible and answer any queries that you may have. When you receive an invitation to join the Association of Mental Health First Aiders, you'll be asked to check that your details are up to date, so your name, your email address and contact details. You'll be asked to review a membership agreement and click if you would like to join membership of the association. You'll also be asked to update the usual data protection and communication preferences as well, so that we can make sure that we send you communications that you're happy to receive to keep you updated with the latest membership support that we're offering. Now, all mental health first aiders get a valid certificate for 3 years once they've attended a mental health first aid course, but we obviously encourage everyone to complete a mental health first aid refresher course every 3 years to keep them up to date with their mental health knowledge and skills, up to date with the latest stats, trends in mental health and any changes that there may have been to the mental health first aid course over time. So when your mental health first aid certificate is nearing its 3-year expiry date, we will email all mental health first aiders 3 months before that expiry date to remind them that they need to refresh their skills and knowledge and attend one of our refresher courses. If you do go on to attend a refresher course, what that will do is that will then renew your membership of the Association of Mental Health First Aiders for free for a further 3 years, and that cycle will repeat. So the refresher and attending the refresher is a way to keep your knowledge and skills up to date, but also the way to renew your membership of the Association of Mental Health First Aiders for free on an ongoing basis as well. When we email out to remind you that you need to do a refresher, we'll always direct mental health first aiders to their workplace mental health first aid lead and their original mental health first aid instructor as well to help to support them and arrange a course. So that's quite a lot of information about the association. We've got lots and lots of time for Q&A now, and I know some of the questions will be about the association itself and some of the logistics around that, but I know some of you will have some questions for Andy and Jemima about their experiences of running and supporting mental health first aid networks in the workplace as well. So I'm just going to firstly go to Jemima and Andy and ask them a bit of a question about the association, and then I'm going to check out the Q&A and start to ask you some of the questions from our webinar attendees today. So Jemima, as a workplace that's got a large mental health first aider network, how are you feeling about the launch of the association and how it will complement the support that you already offer to your mental health first aiders?
I think it's a great initiative in the sense that they're not only having access to the app, they're not only having access to Mental Health First Aid England, but they're also having access to a broader network of mental health first aiders that are in different industries, different sectors that will be able to sort of it can learn from as well. And I think that connectivity will really shine and show in how they handle some of the things that may come up, because maybe in Grant Thornton, because we're professional services, we'll have a different sort of set of challenges that we would have experienced on a regular basis. But having that connection with, you know, someone like Andy, who's coming from Deutsche Bank, will have a different experience that we'll be able to benefit from should we ever encounter that scenario as mental health first aiders. We can learn from each other. And I think for me, that's something that really stands out, the learning opportunity, that networking opportunity that comes with being part of the association.
Thank you. Andy, you're also the chair of the Association of Mental Health First Aiders as well. So not only are you excited for Deutsche Bank to experience this, but you're also excited just generally. I mean, how are you feeling about its launch and what do you want to see happen, given your role as chair of the association, with the association going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I'm humbled, honoured, and frankly delighted to be the founding chair of the association. And you know, the work that's gone into it to get to actually launching it now, it's really exciting. And I think really I'm just looking forward to playing a part really in building the sort of the mental health literacy and empowering growing community of mental health first aiders to do what they can to tackle that stigma and lead that transformative change. But I think really picking up on what Jemima's just said, one of the things that was the absolute key to the success of the program in my workplace is community, right? We can train all the mental health first aiders we like, but if we leave them to their own devices and we don't create a community of support around them, you could argue that it's futile exercise. So I think bringing community both to organizations or groups where community exists and allowing them to share their stories and talk about the best practice and teach others as to how they've made something successful is really exciting. But I think more than anything, what excites me is bringing community to those mental health first aiders who haven't necessarily had one in the past. Right? So whether that's an individual that's trained themselves because they felt they wanted to, or whether it's a smaller group that have gone through the training but don't necessarily have that community behind them to really succeed. I think that's where the association is going to be able to add so much value and really to share best practice, learn from each other. And I think one of the great things I'm really excited about is sharing the stories of unsung heroes within mental health first aid networks across the country and really showcasing the impact that people are able to have as mental health first aiders. So I'm just frankly, I'm thrilled that we're here, and I'm so excited to see how this is going to progress as we go forward.
Thank you, Andy. There's a couple of logistical questions about joining the association and accessing the different benefits within it. So just to kind of address some of those, a couple of people are asking, do they have to wait for their email? Can they sign up now to join the association? Sadly not. Our systems are going to generate some very personalised and unique URL links as part of your personal invitations. There's a lot of technical wizardry going on behind the scenes. So we will be starting to invite people via email from mid-July right through to the start of September. So please, can we just ask for a little bit of patience? Even if you're chomping at the bit to access the membership, you will get your invitation through. Just be a little bit patient with us, that'd be great. There's also a question in there about people who maybe have already done the mental health first aid course and might want to log in and have a look at the app. They've maybe got it downloaded, have forgotten their login details, or maybe want a reminder of how to access some of the things that are already in place that the association will take and build and add to as part of association membership. So if you've got any queries about booking onto a refresher course, or who your original instructor was, or how to log into the app because you've forgotten your login details, I'm just going to ask Abby, who's one of our colleagues on the call, just to post our email query box address into the chat, so you can direct your very individual and unique queries and questions to that email box, and the customer support team will be really happy to address and answer any questions that you've got on an individual level. There's a question on there about youth mental health first aiders. So just to let you know, when we start to invite people from July to September, it's anyone who's done an adult mental health first aid course and an armed forces mental health first aid course that will be invited. We are currently redeveloping our youth mental health first aid course, and that will be available for launch towards the end of this year. And once we launch that, we'll also be launching association membership for any youth mental health first aider who has done the course in the last 3 years as well. So there's sort of a phase 2 for our launch plans, where youth mental health first aiders by the end of this year and early into next year will be also being invited to join the association, and we'll be making sure that there are some very specific youth related content, resources and webinars available for you as you support young people with their mental health. So there's some of the logistical questions. I'm going to go back up to some questions for Andy and Jemima. So there was a question in the chat previously where people were saying, how do you make your mental health first aiders more visible in the workplace? So how do you kind of visibly show people, especially in a hybrid or remote working scenario, how do you make your MHFA aiders visible, and how do people know who they are?
I'll go first then. So for us, we had different strategies. So we have the lanyards that all our mental health first aiders have when they're on site, when they're in any of our offices. But something that we did do for the virtual side is we incorporated badging onto every mental health first aid England, apologies, mental health first aiders image on our Workday system. So on your Workday profile, if you type in anyone's name and they are a mental health first aider, their image comes up, but there is a badge at the bottom that says mental health first aider. If you're in a meeting, that image comes up on Teams, it comes up as well, and you can see who your mental health first aiders are. We also have a SharePoint page, and this is something that I thought about, because in terms of access or reaching out to mental health first aider, sometimes even though you're based in a location and you know who your mental health first aider, you may be looking for someone that has lived experience of a particular thing. So we started to do blurbs or profile blurbs for each mental health first aider. So it's a very short blurb that says, my name is Jemima Nkrumah, I'm a mother of 3, I've got this or that, I'm into football, I'm into, whatever it is that blurb is. So instinctively, if someone went onto that SharePoint page and saw my name as the closest contact for Milton Keynes, they can also look at the blurb to see, is there anything that I'm looking for from this conversation with a mental health first aider that Jemima has experience in. And that's really made an impact in how people even reach out to our mental health first aiders within the business. Whereas before, you'd go on the website, on the SharePoint page, and you would either select the first person that came up or the last person, depending on your mood and that day. But now you can actually look at their profiles and get to have a feel of who that person is before you approach them for a wellbeing conversation or a mental health conversation. So yeah, that's us at Grant Thornton.
Amazing. Thank you, Jemima. There's a couple of really great ideas in the chat. So lots of people saying that they also wear the lanyards. Some people wear green ribbons, and they wear them when they're on Teams calls as well to signify that they're a mental health first aider. Some people have changed their team statuses to say that they're available to chat as an MHFA aider as well, so that people can see on team status that someone's a mental health first aider. Andy, is there anything else in Deutsche Bank that you do to make mental health first aiders more visible?
Yeah, it's really great to hear. It's absolutely great artist feel, I think is the phrase. Joanne, I've made a few notes there. We've done very similar things, in terms of the system upgrades and making sure that where people have done their training, that it's in their email signatures, on their Teams profiles, their work profiles within our system. Something that we were very keen to do was make sure that all mental health first aiders are logged in the same way that first aiders and fire wardens are logged. So we actually worked with our health and safety teams to make sure that they're logged in such the same way. So someone is required and health and safety teams are involved, that they also have those listings as well. I mean, in terms of visibility more broadly, we love a campaign. So back in the pre-pandemic days when everything was paper, remember those days, we did poster campaigns, we did we have TV screens and vending machines with TV screens all over the place. So and they're all centrally controlled, which is wonderful. So we can plan specific campaigns across different sort of forms of screens so that people know who we are. We've run campaigns similarly, Jemima, to what you were saying there about blurbs around. We ran a campaign, it was a number of years ago, but we did run a campaign of I am a mental health aider because, and then people were able to have their photo and then give a brief sort of like a paragraph really of why they chose to become a mental health first aider rather than why they're a first aider or a fire warden or whatever. And we continue to do it. So we make sure that the mental health first aiders, the team there, make sure that the mental health first aiders are very connected with our employee resource groups. They partner a lot with other employee resource groups and do themes. So if there's a particular resource group doing a webinar or a panel discussion or an event about something, then we'll partner and make sure that the concept of mental health in a specific employee demographic is taken into account. But just to Jemima's point, right, green lanyards all over the place, green cubes on tables, green anything we can get our hands on. But I'm very, very keen to continue to do more and make sure that the visibility is as visible as possible.
Yeah, just to add to Andy's point, there's so much power in storytelling, and if anyone ever is wondering, that's a really good place to start. And something that we do sometimes, we do two sides of the same story. So a mental health first aider telling their story or a health champion telling their story, but that really, really resonates. And sometimes what I find is when we have those articles out on our internal page, that triggers more interest and more people say, can I sign up to be a mental health first aider? Can I sign up to be a health champion? And that really, really is impactful for us as a business.
Brilliant, some great tips and ideas there. Thank you so much. There's a question in the chat about how do you make sure that your mental health first aider network is diverse? So how do you really encourage diverse representation of people wanting to come forward and do the role and make sure it's reflective so that people can see people that look like them and realize more and connect more easily? Are there any kind of tips or things that you've done in your own organisations that you can share? Perhaps start with you, Jemima, and then you, Andy.
Yeah. So to be honest with you, when we started, I think the more people knew the benefits of mental health first aiders, the more challenging it was for us to keep on top of the numbers, because we have, as a matter of fact, the problem is we have too many people on our mental health first aider waiting list. So it's easy, relatively easy to pick quite a diverse group from there. So I think if you get it right to begin with in your why of setting up your mental health first aiders, you will have a really big diverse group of people interested in wanting to be mental health first aiders. Obviously, we can't train everybody in the firm, so that's why we have decided to do that 100 people to one mental health first aider. But whatever works for people's businesses and their industries, I think it'll be good to do it that way. So we have, like I said earlier on, certain service lines have more busy schedules or are off-site a lot, and they require to have training for that. So if we take our people advisory team, the conversations they have on a regular basis require them to have knowledge as mental health first aiders to be able to be effective in that role. So they all have mental health first aider training. So instinctively, any people related conversations that happen will have that support there as well. But I think for us, it's something that we've considered from the onset, whether it's a religious spaces, whether it's color, whether it's sexual orientation, we will have someone in that pool of people that can support them.
Thanks, Jemima. Andy, anything to add from you?
I don't really. We're fortunate that we had exactly the same problem in terms of our waiting lists are longer than the receipt that you get from Lidl. But I think one of the great things that we've tried to do and the team tried to do is, again, that partnership with employee resource groups, right? They're built around diversity of firms and being able to partner with them to identify where they may have a need to bring in additional mental health and savings required and covering that. But again, we have the luxury now of long waiting lists, meaning that we can be quite choosy in terms of who comes forward. And we sort of, without wanting to say interview, we do question people when they present their name into the hat as to why do you want to become a mental health first aider? Are you collecting badges, or is it something that you actually want to make sure you're doing? And I wouldn't suggest anybody collect badges. But yeah, no, it's nothing really more to add. I think it's a great problem to have, but I think to Jemima's point, if you lay the foundations right, it's the work further on, and when you do, if you are fortunate enough to see that great expansion, that work's already been done, and the sort of processes in place to make sure that you're maintaining a good, diverse range of individuals who step forward to take on this really important role.
Brilliant. Thank you both. A couple more logistical questions about the association of popping into the Q&A. So quite a few people are saying they may have changed role since they originally did their mental health first aid training. So just to confirm, if you change organisations, the mental health first aid course that you went on is individual to you. So you can take those skills and knowledge and you can apply them in a new organisation. Your membership of the association would also transfer with you as an individual as well. It's not an organisational membership. A few people are saying that email addresses may have changed because of role changes, or just generally in life, personal email changes happen. So if any of you are wanting to make sure that we've got your most up-to-date information ahead of you perhaps receiving your invitation to join the association, again, if you could email us, and Abby, I'm going to ask you to paste again the query email inbox address into the chat so that people know what that is, and you can drop us a line and just check that we've got your latest email address and it's up to date, so you can be confident that you'll receive your association invite as well. It is 4 minutes to go to the end of the webinar, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to thank both Andy and Jemima for their amazing insights and for sharing their experiences and answering lots of questions. There are so many questions in the chat that we can get to, and in the Q&A function. I imagine we could have gone on and spoken for hours about this. But just to kind of wrap up in terms of next steps, I'm just going to reshare the last slide from our slide deck, just to give you a bit of a wrap up. But call to action: if you are not a mental health first aider and you are interested in taking the course and then being invited to join the Association of Mental Health First Aiders for free after that course, you can visit Mental Health First Aid England's website at mhfaengland.org and take a look at some of the courses that are on offer there, and book yourself a place, or maybe talk to your own workplace mental health and wellbeing lead just to check that you don't already have this training in place within your organisation already, and can just join the courses that are already arranged. You can find out more about membership of the Association of Mental Health First Aiders and how to join, and some of the benefits and the resources and support that are available at the association's website, and that's www.aomhfa.org. And we're also going to send out 2 really useful guides for people who have either already got mental health first aiders in place or perhaps haven't. But we have a guide about the role of a mental health first aider, which outlines what a mental health first aider is, what it isn't, the kinds of day-to-day responsibilities of a mental health first aider, how to look after your own self-care, some of the boundaries of the mental health first aider role. So there's lots of really useful information in that guide that outline the role and how to do it. There's also a guide for workplaces as well, which is how to implement mental health first aiders into your workplace, and we'll send a link out to you for that. So it really gets you to think about, have you got a wider strategy for mental health and wellbeing first, and how would mental health first aiders and a network of mental health first aiders sit and complement within that wider wellbeing strategy. And it gets you to think through some of the logistics that we've talked about today, about how do you recruit mental health first aiders, how do you support them, how do you make them visible, how do you make sure they're really having impact. So again, a useful guide for you to take a look at today. That's everything from our webinar. I hope you've enjoyed hearing about real experiences, tips. You've got some insight. The chat's been sharing lots of best practice between attendees as well, which hopefully has been really useful for you. I hope you've enjoyed hearing about the Association of Mental Health First Aiders and the launch, and you're looking forward to receiving an invite or taking one of our courses in order to join. But do check out our websites and find out more information. And all that's left for me to say is I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and thanks for joining us.